Have you ever felt that cold, creeping sensation that tells you something is terribly wrong before you even see it? Imagine stepping into a place that should feel ordinary, familiar, but instead every shadow whispers secrets, and the silence weighs heavy like a warning. Tonight I'm going to take you deep into a story where the ordinary turns sinister, where empty aisles become a maze of dread, and unseen eyes watch your every move. This isn't just a tale. It's a journey into fear itself. So lean in close and prepare yourself, because what you're about to hear will make you question the safety of the places you think you know. It was nearly midnight when I decided to make a quick trip to Walmart, hoping to avoid the chaos of daytime crowds. The idea seemed simple enough: get in, grab what I needed, and get out quickly. But as I pulled into the parking lot, the thick silence hanging in the air gave me a strange feeling I couldn't shake. The place was practically deserted, bathed in the cold glow of the parking lights, and the building itself looked more like a giant sleeping beast than a bustling store. I told myself to relax. After all, I'd been to Walmart plenty of times before. Nothing could be different about this night, or so I thought. Walking through the automatic doors, the usual fluorescent buzz felt muffled, almost as if the store was holding its breath. I grabbed a cart and started down one of the endless aisles. The shelves, usually cluttered with colorful products and noisy shoppers, were eerily still and quiet. The usual cacophony of announcements and checkout beeps was nowhere to be heard. My footsteps echoed faintly on the polished floor, a lonely sound in the vast emptiness. The silence felt unnatural, heavy, pressing down on me with every step I took. As I moved deeper into the store, a faint sound caught my attention. Whispers, barely audible, like a voice carried on the wind, just out of reach. I stopped, listening intently, but the words were jumbled and unclear, as if spoken in a language I didn't understand, or a fragmented sentence lost to time. At first, I brushed it off as my imagination, perhaps the store's ventilation system creating strange echoes, or the rustling of packaging somewhere in the distance. But the whispers persisted, growing slightly louder, more urgent. I started to feel watched. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled, and I found myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone. But the aisles were empty, the shadows long and dark between the towering shelves. Each step I took was mirrored by a sensation of movement just beyond my vision, something slipping between the racks, staying just out of sight. The feeling of isolation deepened, but so did a creeping dread. I realized I wasn't just alone, I was being followed. The whispers transformed into faint murmurs, overlapping voices with no clear source. I tried to tell myself to stay calm, to keep moving and not to let my mind spiral into fear, but the store seemed to close in around me, the light dimming slightly, shadows stretching and dancing at the edges of my vision. My heart raced as I quickened my pace, trying to reach the checkout area, my mind scrambling to rationalize what was happening. Every now and then, I thought I heard footsteps echoing behind me, but whenever I turned, nothing was there. The unsettling presence was intangible but undeniably real. The cold sensation of something unseen brushing past me made my skin crawl. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it wasn't friendly. I passed the electronics section and paused, a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. A shadow darted between the aisles, a dark shape that melted into the darkness before I could focus on it. My breath hitched, and I felt a sudden chill that seemed to seep from the floor into my bones. The whispers grew louder, overlapping with an almost indecipherable chant that sent waves of terror crashing through me. It was then that I realized the store wasn't just empty, it was alive. Something ancient, something dark and malevolent was lurking in those aisles. The cold grip of fear tightened around me, making it hard to breathe. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to run out those doors and never look back. But the store seemed endless, the aisles looping back in impossible ways, trapping me in a maze with no exit. My hands trembled as I gripped the cart, now more a shield than a convenience. The whispers followed me relentlessly, circling, sometimes rising into piercing cries that echoed through the cavernous space. The air thickened, heavy with a suffocating presence that seemed to drain the warmth from my body. Time lost meaning as I wandered, desperate for any sign of other people or an exit. The store's bright fluorescent lights flickered sporadically, casting harsh shadows that twisted and writhed. I felt like a prisoner in a nightmare, hunted by a faceless entity that thrived in the darkness between the shelves. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't just a building or a store. It was a trap, a living, breathing nightmare designed to prey on the unsuspecting, to isolate and terrify. And I was caught in its cold grasp. I thought I was alone in the vast empty Walmart, but as the minutes dragged on, the unsettling truth started to reveal itself in the most terrifying ways. The lights that had been steady flickered erratically, plunging the aisles into momentary darkness before harsh, artificial illumination snapped back on. Each flicker twisted the shadows into monstrous shapes, and I couldn't tell whether the movements I saw were tricks of the light or something far more sinister. The whispers I had heard before now grew louder and more distinct. I strained to make out the words, but they were fragmented, as if coming from multiple voices speaking over each other in a maddening cacophony. The air around me felt thick, oppressive, like a heavy fog pressing in from all sides. The store's quiet stillness had transformed into a suffocating silence that made my ears ring and my skin crawl. Suddenly, I heard a soft scraping sound, like metal sliding against metal, coming from one of the aisles. My heart pounded as I cautiously turned towards the noise, gripping the shopping cart as if it were a lifeline. The sound grew louder and closer, echoing down the empty corridors, sending chills racing through my veins. Then, without warning, the shelves nearby trembled as if something was moving behind them. Products rattled and fell with a sickening crash onto the floor, the echoes bouncing through the cavernous space. Panic surged through me as I realized I was not just being followed, I was being hunted. I tried to back away slowly, but the aisles seemed to shift and stretch, elongating into endless corridors. It was as if the store itself was alive, reshaping to trap me inside. My breath came in short, frantic gasps as I pushed my cart forward, desperate to find an exit, but every turn seemed to lead me deeper into the maze. In the dim light, I glimpsed fleeting shadows darting just beyond my vision, dark shapes that melted into the darkness whenever I tried to focus on them. A cold, spectral hand seemed to brush past my shoulder, sending an icy shiver down my spine. The whispers turned into agonized cries, echoing with a despair that clawed at my sanity. The more I tried to escape, the more the store seemed to conspire against me. The fluorescent lights flickered erratically, casting grotesque shadows that danced along the walls. The cold air grew heavier, suffocating, as if the very atmosphere was infused with malevolence. The once familiar aisles had transformed into a nightmare labyrinth where fear reigned supreme. I stumbled into the frozen food section, where the chill in the air turned into a biting cold that seeped through my clothes and chilled my bones. The freezer doors slammed shut behind me, the clang reverberating like a death knell. I frantically tried to open them, but they wouldn't budge. I was trapped, caught in the jaws of a sinister entity that reveled in my terror. A sudden movement caught my eye, a figure standing motionless at the far end of the aisle. Its form was vague, shifting like smoke, but its presence was unmistakable. It watched me with eyes that burned with an unholy light, a silent predator awaiting its moment. The whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar inside my mind, overwhelming my senses and blurring the lines between reality and nightmare. I pounded on the freezer doors, screaming for help, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence. The figure began to advance slowly, its shape dissolving into the shadows as it came closer. The air grew colder still, and a suffocating darkness wrapped around me like a shroud. I closed my eyes, willing myself to wake up, to escape this living nightmare. But when I opened them again, I was still there, alone, hunted, and trapped within the sinister maze of that Walmart. The realization crashed down on me like a wave. I wasn't going to leave this place easily, if at all. Every instinct screamed at me to keep fighting, to find a way out. But the store had become a prison, a place where reality twisted and the shadows held dominion. The The terror that had crept up on me was now fully unleashed, a relentless force intent on breaking my spirit. I don't know how long I wandered those haunted aisles, but time lost all meaning. The fluorescent lights flickered endlessly, casting eerie patterns that mocked my desperation. The whispers and shadows pursued me relentlessly, a constant reminder that I was prey in a place designed for nightmares. In that dark, suffocating space, I understood one brutal truth. Some places aren't just buildings or stores, they are gateways to fear itself. And that Walmart, on that cold, lonely night, was one of them.